Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here and to see so many people out this evening. And I want to look at this part as basically three stages. I want to just firstly touch upon where your tax money goes right now. Because I think I noted in the discussions today that various issues came up about the conditions of roads, subdivision approvals, and that other word which we won't mention right now. But I want to touch upon the confusion that lies out there in the general public as to exactly where the tax money goes, and talk about worker taxes. And then I want to just focus on the incorporation process, and more recently the one I've been involved in 2009. And then in the last part, just to talk about incorporation, what the trade-offs are. People always talk about increased taxes, but I think you have to look at some of the trade-offs for possible increased taxes. There might not necessarily be increased taxes, because remember, our taxes haven't gone down in the last 15 years, even though we're in an unorganized electoral area. So if I could just start with the first slide. I want to put up a slide that shows the current system that we're involved in. Most of you know about the Cowichan Valley Regional District. The Cowichan Valley Regional District provides governance services to a very, very large geographical area, extending right to the border of the Nanaimo Regional District, very far west actually, almost to the west coast of the island, and of course it's bordered by the ocean on this side to the top of the Nile. So that's a very large geographical area. And regional districts were set up in the early 1960s to really capture those areas that weren't included in a municipality. So within this area we have the largest municipality, North Cowichan, and we have the town of Ladysmith and the town of Lake Cowichan. These three entities are municipalities, if you like. They have their own mayors and municipal councils. The rest of the area are electoral areas like ourselves. Shawnigan being the largest electoral area with a population of 7,500 people. If you take the three southernmost electoral areas, A, Mill Bay, electoral area B, and electoral area C, Coral Hill, that's about 16,500 people, which puts that area as being one of the largest unorganized areas in British Columbia in terms of governance. And when you look at any issue involving governance, it's basically split between the CBRD, which covers things like solid waste or garbage disposal, planning, bylaw enforcement, parks, regional parks and local parks, recreation. Those are the kinds of areas that it gets involved in there. And then we have another level of governance called improvement districts, of which one of the larger ones is the Shawnigan Lake Fire Department, which serves about 3,500 properties and is run by about 30 volunteers, and they have 2 fire ports in this area. So it's one of the largest improvement districts, and they have their own trustees that are responsible, and they have their own taxing area. So if you're included in their fire district boundaries, you pay money toward fire improvement protection. And we have a myriad of water improvement districts. When I was director here, the one that was the largest was the Sherwood water system that provided water and some sewage for the Shawnigan Beach estates. And that went bankrupt, so we had to basically include that within the CBRD, set an area to capture all the people that lived there and collect the taxes to improve the system, because it was in a pretty poor state, and it's been run by the CBRD ever since. So those are the two branches. I talked about CBRD very briefly, improvement district, and then we have the province. And the province is responsible for the one that you'll probably know about is highways. All the highways here are contracted to Main Road, and they provide the highway service, and they set all the standards. They also have a very important role in providing the approvals offices for subdivisions. So they set the parameters in terms of road size. This came up this afternoon. I think it used to be 66 feet, whatever that is in meters. That was the standard road size, and you could not have anything less than that. And there are all kinds of oddities that come out of that. In Mill Bay, the more recent developments that have been done, the developer wanted to put in pedestrian pavements, and the approvals officer said, no, it doesn't fit with our mandate. We don't want them. I guess there might have been a consideration of liability or something to do with that. I don't know. But it's an odd situation because in some of those subdivisions there are pavements and in others there aren't. So it's very kind of arbitrary. And the people involved are a long way from us. They're in Nanaimo or Saanich. So that gives this feeling to people that they can't readily, the people they think they should go to complain are not in their local area. They're in fact a long way away. So the process, very simply, is I realized when I was electoral area director, and I'm sure there are many here today, that this wasn't really serving our residents very well. Because we lack control. We had to refer all our planning decisions to the CBRD, which is a 15-member board. So there are a lot of people involved in approval that weren't even living in this part of the world, the South Cowichan area. And we had to, if we did planning where we had community plans, that all ultimately had to get approval from Victoria. So that was a lengthy process. And we didn't really feel we had true control. And it lacked flexibility because basically if you're in an improvement district, the money for the fire department only goes to that fire department. And you can't move funds around. It's a very, very straight-jacket approach to budget and finance. So the process is that if communities feel dissatisfied, they can, sort of groundswell people in the community feel that they need change. They can apply to the minister to have a study done for Incorporation. And your community in the most recent 2009, Shawnigan was the catalyst behind that movement to get something looked at. The minister, of course, Mill Bay got involved. They felt that they needed a municipality. And Cobble Hill also wanted to get involved. But the minister, who was Ida Chong, the minister at the time, decided, no, she wanted, if there was going to be a study done, it was to include the three South Cowichan electoral areas, A, B, and C. So that was her determination, and we went through the process. The process was unusual because typically in forming a municipality, it's one study which includes finding out where the boundaries should be, looking at all the services, which services should be transferred to the municipality, which should be left with the CBRD, what kinds of arrangements could be made, and then looking at the financial implications. What's this all going to cost? So ultimately, you would make the decision in a referendum and you would know this is the choice before me and these are the costs involved. The minister decided that, and this wasn't, we weren't a precedent, there are other examples in the province, but basically she decided to split the process. So our mandate was simply to engage the public, discuss forms of governance, not just the municipality, what other changes could be made within the regional district to better represent our needs in the south end, and to look at boundaries. Okay, And there are all kinds of boundaries that cross purposes, like water districts that are half in area A and half in area B, and fire districts, boundaries that are not aligned to electoral area boundaries, lots of complicating factors. So that was our mandate, basically to present a report that said these are some of the boundaries that we should look at. And if I quickly look at the next slide, I'll show you the one that has to do. This was the Shawnigan boundary that was that came out of this study. And you'll notice that it's very different from the Shawnigan that you probably know looking at electoral area maps, because we cut off a huge area to the west here. Okay, down towards the Coates Island River. And we've actually used the Coates Island as a boundary in the northern half because the people that lived on this side of the Coates Island had no ready access to Shawnigan without going all the way around down the highway back into Shawnigan Lake. And they've long petitioned to be taken out of their area. And also when you're looking at boundaries, you're looking at geographical boundaries, but you're looking at an area that makes sense financially, because if you go on to become a municipality, you take on responsibility for things like roads. And roads are, because we are so spread out in such a large geographic area, are a very expensive proposition. So if you can cut out road areas that are not necessarily important to the local sense of community here, and use that money judiciously, you can come up with a better boundary. This wasn't the only map we came up. We came up with one other one, which included all three South End electoral areas. Okay? And it caused some controversy, obviously, because people feel quite strongly that, you know, Mill Bay feel that they could be an incorporated area on their own. And Cobble Hill kind of waver on the boundary as to whether they really want to be included or not. At this point, they're interested participants to see where this might go. So where do we go from here? The government decided that because of lack of funds, it would not pursue the second part of the study, which was to look at the financial implications. And that was, in my mind, really, really unfortunate, because we could have been on top of a lot of the problems that we're dealing with right now. But maybe some of the problems that we're dealing with right now will be a catalyst to spur more interest in this as a possibility. So when you incorporate a lot of those functions that the CBRD handle, you would include within the municipality. Some of them would remain as part of the Cowichan Valley Regional District. For example, I would imagine solid waste, garbage and recycling would remain a regional thing. The regional parks would probably remain a regional recreation, much the same thing. But we would take on subdivision approvals, zoning, OCP's official community planning, and a lot of the other responsibilities, policing. You would have to, in an area like this with more than 5,000 people, you would have to pay a big chunk for policing costs as well. But you would get that, you would have your own council in there, and you would get that chance to decide what your priorities were. And yes, that might cost you a little bit more, but maybe that's worth having. I mean, I'm sure people, I particularly feel that our highways are in a shocking state and need improvement. So personally, I'd like to see that improved. That's one area, but there are many, many other ones that need looking at. So it's not just a question of always looking at cost, although cost obviously is important. And the other speakers here will address that because they've gone through this actual process. And so there are trade-offs. But my role as the chair of this committee was to engage the public. We did that through lots of public meetings. We sent flyers home, questionnaires and so on, and get people looking at the options, not coming down hard and fast on any particular plan at this point, but getting people engaged to say, maybe this is a better way forward than the present system. Thank you.